Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Steelers Sanctuary podcast. I'm your host, Dave Ribeiro from SteelersSanctuary.com. With me today is my co-host, David Korab, and friend of the pod, Ron Lippock. And we got a very special guest today, former Steelers, Vince Williams. Vince, what's going on?
How you doing, guys? Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on. We really appreciate it. So first off, what are you doing now that you're outside of football? Are you doing coaching or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm actually one of the linebacker coaches at Pine Ridge High School. I also coach youth football for the Pine Ridge Youth League. I do 9, 10, 11-year-olds.
Is that something you're looking to do in the future, is be a coach at the NFL level or the collegiate level maybe?
I don't know. I mean, I really enjoy it. I knew that at the end of the day, I wanted to be around the game of football. It was very important for me to be able to do that. And after I retired, I kind of just got into it because my kids play youth sports. And I just found it was a way for me to stay involved and actually share the game with kids that I grew up on. I'm like, guys, I really love this. It took me a long way. Not only did it teach me a lot about, competition, but also just a lot of life lessons, integrity, how to deal with adversity, teamwork, you know what I mean? In everyday life, you got to deal with teamwork. You got to deal with some type of adversity. I think using football as a tool to be able to learn those things is a great resource. I mean, you get to have fun, you get to hang out with your friends, and you get to learn some valuable life lessons along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Vince, do you find any of the coaching lessons that you've sort of experienced as you've played sort of resonating now as you're filling in that role as a coach? Any coaches that help mentor you most, or any coaching lessons sort of stick with you?
Man, to be honest with you, I'm very fortunate. I had a ridiculous coaching pedigree. I mean, I've been coached by Bobby Bowden, Jimbo Fisher, Stoops. I've been around so many great guys, Mike Tomlin, Dick LeBeau, Keith Butler, all those guys. Tom Shaw, who was a sports trainer, who was also the speed and conditioning coach for the Patriots, and they won all those Super Bowls. So my whole coaching pedigree is just amazing. The things that those guys taught me just helped me be a great person. Like now that I'm actually outside of the median of football, once you play football for so long, that's just kind of what you do. But being able to broaden my horizons and do other things just based on those things I've learned in football, I can't even tell you how valuable it's been to me.
Dave, you got a question?
Yeah. I mean, speaking of coaching, you made the comment recently on Twitter that you thought that Terrell Edmunds should make the move to linebacker. And then you made the comment that you thought Kendrick Green should make the move to fullback. What do they have that makes you think that they can make that move and be successful?
I mean, if you look at the game, well, you got to talk about the evolution of football, right? For Terrell Edmunds, I'll speak on him first. When I first came into the league, we had guys like Darrell Washington, Ryan Shazier came in a little after me. A lot of those undersized guys. Mark Barron was making his transition because nowadays to play strong safety, you can't really play kind of the strong safety way that they used to play at the Cam Chancellor type guys, the Troy Polamalu type guys. You have to actually have a guy that can line up over the apex of the defense. You got to line up over the number 2 receiver. You got to be able to play much more like a nickel. So you have guys who may not have the fluidity of the hips. They're not able to transition to man-to-man coverage defenders, especially when you're the Steelers and you're running 5-man pressure in a 4-man pressure a lot. You got to have somebody that can really be versatile enough at that position. I think that when you take a guy like Terrell Edmunds and his athleticism, his actually size and his length, and you transition him from covering wide receivers in the apex to slower running backs and tight end and longer people, I think that just plays more into his wheelhouse. I also think with the amount of talent that we've been able to establish on the D line, and also putting Cam Hayward in there, you don't really need as much bulk as linebacker because you got some guys that are commanding a tremendous amount of attention up front. I mean, you have to double team Cam, you have to double team TJ. It's not going to leave a lot of room for linemen to be able to freely engage up on linebackers. So his lack of size isn't really going to be that much of an issue because you have a dominant front in front of him. As far as Kendrick Green, he's extremely athletic. I mean, if you look at his charts for athleticism, it's off the charts, right? I remember when I first came into the league, fullbacks used to actually be guys. I think people are forgetting because of the lost art of the fullback. I mean, you had Vonta Leach, Lorenzo Neal. These guys were legit 275-pound guys that were athletes. They could move. I think the fullback from the Baltimore Ravens is a perfect example of this. You know what I mean? I mean, we don't have the H-backs really anymore. Those guys that are half tight ends, half fullbacks like the Lady Walker. I think the use check is the only one that's really left, the guy that kind of, fits that mold. But if you just think about the traditional way that you run a fullback and get back to traditional 21 personnel football, you can really bang it in there. I mean, look at Roosevelt Nixon, what he was able to do for us in Le'Veon. Even Le'Veon got hurt when D'Angelo Williams came in. Roosevelt Nixon was a big part of the reason they were able to have a successful run game, because we were able to just run the ball downhill at people.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense when you say that.
Do you see the game now towards, there's a pendulum that seems to be swinging towards, defenses get smaller to help stop the passing game. Now offenses seem to be getting a little bit bigger. Steelers certainly seem to be doing that with their running game now. And do you see sort of that game swinging back into that physical style offense and defense is getting bigger again?
I don't think it'll all the way swing back, because I don't think you'll have enough coaches to be able to buy into that. I mean, we always have teams in the NFL that like to run the ball more, but I don't think it'll ever be in vogue again. I think that the way the game is shifted, it's just very difficult to score 40 points running the ball like that. Now, if you don't really care so much about that and you have a fan base that's okay with that, they'll just take the wins, they'll be patient enough with it. And yeah, you can win a lot of games that way.
Is there a fan base you're thinking of there?
What'd you say?
Is there a fan base you're thinking of there?
I mean, I just think that the Pittsburgh Steelers fan base, they like to see football that way. I remember when we lost Ben, we had Duck Hodges out there, and we were just barely winning games. And Steelers fans was loving it because it was just straight defensive games. If the defense didn't play well, we wouldn't win. And I think just as a fan base, Steelers don't mind watching football that way. They actually prefer to see defenses taking over and offense have limited but effective possessions. But as a league whole, I don't think as a league wide you'll see people commit to that. I think it's much more flashy. It's much more appeasing to the eye to play the up-tempo spread passing game.
We've debated that a lot on this podcast. Do you think that ultimately you can win that way? Throwback offense, the Powell running game, rely on defense when you've got teams like the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and the Bills and stuff like that. Do you think that's a winning formula in today's football?
So we're just talking about the size, right? I think this is what the Steelers had to figure out. I think they did a great job of addressing it. You have a bigger running back, but you have a smaller offensive line and more speed built offensive line. I think if it's something that you want to do, you have to commit to it. Not saying that we won't be explosive. We have explosive guys on the outside, right? It's just how you want to generate those explosive yards. Do you want to go full spread and let Kenny Pickett have to dissect defenses, create mismatches that way? Or do you want to, kind of play more traditional, pound the ball a little bit, run the ball and run efficient situations, stay ahead of the chains, and then take your shots when it's actually advantageous for Kenny? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, it's 2nd and 3 right now. We could run the ball and get the third down. We could run a power. We could run a duo. We could get the third down. But also, we can pull a safety down into the box, get George Pickens down the field one-on-one with somebody deep. That's a much cleaner read for Kenny. It's going to help create those explosive yards.
Absolutely. Let's go back to 2013. You were a 6th-round pick by the Steelers. Did you have any idea that the Steelers had interest in you at all? Or was that a surprise that came out of nowhere?
Oh, no. So I had a long history with the Steelers because Tom Shaw also used to train Ike Taylor, Will Gay, a lot of the Steelers players he used to train. I'm from that area, so I kind of grew up around them. I grew up around Brian McFadden. I grew up around all these guys. So I just kind of adopted the way. This is in the prime of their winning, too. Like, I was around all those guys. I was around James Ferrier all the time. And these guys kind of became, like, mentors to me in a way. And I was in my youth, and I was just growing up trying to find my own personality and my own football identity. And I think they kind of helped mold that. And in a way, they kind of made me a Steeler because I started thinking that was the way that football should be played. So I started playing football that way. So when I got to the Senior Bowl, I met with Kevin Colbert for the first time. And he was like, yeah, Vince, we don't really have to do an interview. He's like, I feel like I've known you forever, right? We're going to bring you in on a visit. Like, we don't got to spend a lot of time talking right now. I think you're just a Steeler. And
that's crazy. That's crazy to hear that.
Why do you say that, though? Like, what's crazy about it?
Like, just to know that you were already at a young age knowing all these guys that were Steelers already before you ever got drafted by them.
Oh yeah, for sure. We talk about it all the time. It's funny because they used to always be like, "Oh, Vince, you're gonna play with us one day." Ike used to say it all the time. Like I thought it was a joke. So I knew Ike when he was a rookie. So he when he first met me, he was like, I like your disposition, man. You're kind of mean, man. I like you. You're a mean little kid. Like I like that. And I remember when I went to the Senior Bowl, he called me. He was like, "Hey, I just told Kevin Colbert you were there. You need to go introduce yourself." So when I went to introduce myself, Kevin was like, "I already know you. All the guys talk about you already." So
there you go. Did you have to pay Ike some agency fee for that?
No, Ike was always like a big brother to me. I looked up to him. I appreciated his story. You know what I mean? Like coming from a small school, not getting invited to the combine, switching positions multiple times in college, never really being able to catch. I feel like he had a hole in his game, right? Like I had a hole in my game. I feel like all those guys that I kind of trained with, they were all like misfits in a way, and I feel like the Steelers made that work and it was amazing. And that's what people loved about it.
They played to your strengths.
Yes. Always, historically, it just works that way. Like it's not supposed to work, but it works.
You had a big Senior Bowl, right? Coming out, you really did well in that Senior Bowl. I saw a highlight of you. You blew up a guard in one of the practices. I think that highlights made its rounds. That was a big thing for you, right?
I think it was just Jimbo, though. I mean, we had 11 people from our class go to the Senior Bowl, and Jimbo just made us believe that we just were not that good, to be honest with you. Like, he kept his foot on us, and the whole defense was good. All of us were good, but he just kept trying to dig and get more out of us. So I remember when I arrived to the Senior Bowl, I thought that the standard was just so high. Like my standard for football was so high because at that Florida State time, we were competing against the best. I mean, we won a national championship the year after I graduated. The year I graduated, I think we sent like 9 people in the draft. So our standard for excellence was so high that when I actually got around my peers, I was like, "Oh, these guys suck. I'm definitely getting drafted." Like, you're terrible. Like, you're not good. Like, you would not play at Florida State. You would not play. We always laugh because our entire linebacker room went to the NFL. Like, all of them. And we jersey swap and we would talk about it. And we was just like, man, that's a crazy thing because we didn't think we were that good at the time. But now looking back on it, it's like, well, everybody was good.
Yeah. So when you look at the linebacker room now, Vince, I don't know how much you're following the Steelers now. Lots of new faces. You coming in as a rookie, adjusting to a new defense. What do you think is the most important thing for these guys coming in now? Because the whole linebacker, even I think I looked at it, the most experienced person in the Steelers linebacker room right now was there for 1 year.
Yeah, so linebacker you have to create. It's probably the most difficult position on the Steelers defense. I think a lot of people don't give it enough credit. When people talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers linebackers, they immediately just go to the outside guys, historically and recently. But what really holds the defense together is the middle linebackers. You got to have longevity. You got to have guys that play that position for an extended period of time because of how much is asked of that position. Like, you have to be able to run all the defenses. You have to be able to run all of the coverages. You can't just be a zone coverage because we play zone. We play matchup zone. You don't know who's going to be your guy in that matchup. You may be 3-receiver hook. You may be the seam guy. You may be one-on-one with a tight end. You may be one-on-one with a receiver. You may be one-on-one with a running back that gets flexed out. Then also you have to be able to blitz because we don't send 6-man pressures. We're predominantly a 5-man pressure group. So you're going to have to be able to beat somebody. Like a 5-man pressure just guarantees one-on-ones. Right. So you're going to have to be combative in the blitz game and be able to beat a one-on-one. So it's just it's like a Swiss Army knife of the defense. And if you don't have those guys, or you have guys that come out of college that aren't used to being asked that much, like asked to do that much, they were like, yo, I played at such and such college. I just played cover 3. Or I played at such and such college and I just played man-to-man on the running back. That was my responsibility. And then you got to be able to be a great communicator as well because we communicate from the front end to the back end. So you have to make front calls and then you have to be able to communicate with the back end too. So it takes a guy that has to have some type of intelligence to be able to pull that off.
So what do you think of this linebacker core then now that as they sit? Do you think that maybe they need to be on the phone and say Miles Jack, or do you think they're good now or no?
I think they're going to be fine. I think that they're going to have to just draft the linebackers. They're going to have to go and get guys that can do it. And I think that's just been a difficult thing to do. Like the transition from that guy. Like they have to find another high-end, super talented linebacker that can communicate, and then they have to pair him with another guy that can do the same thing. I mean, finding two of those is hard to do, but I definitely think it's possible. I think they just got to go about doing it a different way. That's why I was saying I thought the Terrell Edmunds move to middle linebacker would be great because we send a lot of safety pressures. I mean, our 5-man safety pressure game is a big part of our game. Terrell Edmunds was an efficient blitzer, so he could come down and he could blitz. Like it wasn't that he was great in the box. He was amazing with the contact. He had no problem with it. So I felt like that transition would just give you another hyper athletic guy in the middle who could flex out and cover and also be able to blitz and play some rundown for you. So, yeah, you're looking for those type of guys.
Vince, I wanted to ask you about Devin Bush. And you talked about the complexity of the Steelers' defense, especially for the linebackers. Was that part of what made him struggle as a Steelers defender?
I think Devin is a mystery to be. Like, Devin, like, I've seen people say that Devin don't like football, but he really loves football. That was evident in his rookie year. I mean, he was having a tremendous amount of upside. I think that the knee injury did play a role in his development and how far he fell behind. I think he was also a very young guy. Like a 20-year-old in the NFL is a difficult thing to handle. You know what I mean? I think Juju was fortunate. When Juju was 20, we had a pretty good offense around him full of leaders over there. A lot of grown-ups, a lot of people that was dropping their kids off and then coming up to the facility to play football. Like we had a lot of guys to kind of help him. I think Devin, he had that a little bit, but he needed more of it. And I think the knee injury slowed down too. But I think he's going to have a productive NFL career because he's so young. I mean, even if he plays till he's 30, he's going to play, 10 years in the NFL?
Yeah.
So that type of athletic ability, you never know, okay?
You know, we're talking to Stephen Meyer. I think Stephen, coached for you a little bit with the inside linebacker crew, right? In Pittsburgh? Maybe.
Yeah.
And we're talking to him a little bit, and he talked to, sort of a question that I had in the back of my mind was, we're talking about finding these linebackers that could do all these different things. And I was sort of liking it to like finding a unicorn, right? There's very few linebackers that seem to be able to do everything at an elite level, at the level in which this NFL requires now, because, 1 minute you're covering the receiver, the next minute you're taking on linemen and trying to tackle, big backs. How hard is it to find those guys? And is the solution really what the Steelers seem to be doing more of, which is these varying sub packages?
I think the game is all sub package, but even in those sub packages, you got to find guys who can be able to do it. I think what pick was Ryan? I think Ryan was the 14th pick.
Yeah.
Lawrence Timmons was the 12th pick or the 13th pick. James Ferrier was the what pick? James Ferrier was the top 10 pick. Right, these are hyper athletic guys in these positions. These are first round top picks. Like, imagine if TJ Watt was a middle linebacker. We wouldn't be having middle linebacker conversations. So I think you can find them. I think you just got to go and get those guys to do it. Like, you know what I mean? I think where you really got to find is the Vince Williams, the alternative to those guys. You know what I mean? The Highsmiths, the Ryan Clarks, the guys who complement the other guys. I think that's the harder thing to find. The alternative to the Minka, because you're going to get the Minkas, like you're going to draft for those guys, but it has to be those middle round guys that have to develop into players that could be useful. Even if they're only useful in a certain type of way, you got to have a benefit and be able to use that guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like a guy that's just slightly better than a Robert Spillane. Not dissing Spillane, but a guy that's just a little bit better than Spillane. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, okay.
No, that makes sense.
Good. He does his job. He's not this, but we only have one of those. But he's not that, but he's this, and that's cool too. I can accept that.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, you and Ryan Shazier were the perfect complement, right? I mean, you were the thumper, the blitzer, and he was the athletic cover guy. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better combination at inside linebacker, especially in the Steelers system, right?
I think it just depends, right? I mean, I think the Larry Foote, James Ferrier combination was nice. I think the Lawrence Timmons and James Ferrier combination was nice. I think it just depends on what type of combination you're looking for. I think I watched linebacker tandems forever. The Devin Harris and he plays for the Saints right now. DeMario Davis combination for the Jets was nice. It just depends on having two quality guys that have great traits to work around and then also can work together. I think that's what makes the duo nice. It makes it work. Me, I was half a lineman. Ryan was half a DB. That's how it worked. And it just was great for what we were trying to get done. It gave us something to build around because now you already know that you can just hang your hat on your 5-man pressures because you have half a safety and half a lineman on the field. It just works out that way.
When you look back on your career, the Killer B era, is it disappointing that you guys didn't win at least one Super Bowl? So much talent on that team. You had great head coach, Ben Roethlisberger, great defense. Is it a little disappointing that you guys didn't win at least one?
Yeah, a little bit. No, I think back, but maybe we just wasn't good enough. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what I always think about. I think about good teams in other sports that don't win it. And it's like, man, like how did we pull it off? But I think just a testament to like how hard it is to really win. Like, you know what I mean? It just speaks to how good those teams that won the Super Bowl really were. Like they were better than us. So, because they actually got the job done. But I try not to have any regrets, man. If we were going to win one, we were going to win one. I don't feel bad, man. I was just thankful to play on those teams. You know what I mean? I wish we could have got it all done, but we really didn't get it done.
Those are fun teams. A lot of characters on those teams. Do you got any good stories from back in the day? I mean, you played with, James Harrison and Bud Dupree and Le'Veon Bell and any good stories that you can.
Not really, just all the stories that you guys know.
Yeah.
I'm going to bet that we don't know them all.
I'm pretty sure you guys know them all. Like we didn't do a great job of keeping things in house. So,
no, you didn't.
So all of the stories, everybody knows all the stories.
Were there guys, Vince, that you loved or hated playing against most individual players?
Love playing against. So Tom Brady and Gronk is crazy. Playing against the Patriots is always crazy because of the way they engineer wins, right? Like, man, they would just have a guy that you was game playing against them. You would game plan against them. And then you would come out there and they would just do something completely different from what you game plan against. Like, but you're also a professional. You know what goes into a game plan. You know that sticking with your bread and butter things and sharpening those things, then while adding in and sprinkling in some new things. But just to come out with a completely different game plan in your last 6 games, it's crazy. Like, it's like, how do you do that? Or the way they're able to switch at halftime and adjust. Yeah. And we would adjust. We would make great adjustments. They would adjust again. And then just having Tom Brady be an offensive coordinator on the field and always making the right read and knowing your rotations, knowing who's going to blitz. It's like, man, how do you beat this guy? He knows everything, and he doesn't even have to wait for his coach to help him. He's actually the coach. So it was kind of like playing against, like, how Peyton Manning kind of like really started doing it himself. And then Tom Brady took that and just Tom Brady did. Like, he took the Peyton Manning Omaha stuff and just took it to the next level. Yeah. And I remember it's always a chess match playing against them, trying to figure out what they were trying to do, trying to stop what they were trying to do, also them knowing what you're trying to do. So your disguises don't even make sense. They're just trying to hide things. And it was just always difficult. And I like that. I like the thinking part of the game. It was always fun to play against that.
The NFL made some news lately with approving 2 Thursday night games. You could possibly have 2 Thursday night games, and you came out on Twitter and you made some comments that you didn't think that was a very good idea. Describe to us what it's like playing a Thursday night game in the NFL.
Oh, it's terrible. And then it makes for bad football because you can't put a full game plan in either. So all of your guys are beat up. You have to rest them because you can't go from Sunday. It's impossible to do. Like, your body's not even really recovered by then. So you have to rest them. You can't really put in a great game plan. I feel like it's just rushing out a not completed product because your game planning is at a percentage of what it could be. Your players are at a percentage of what they could be, and you're not getting the full experience. Like, you're not watching the fully ready to go Pittsburgh Steelers.
And you notice it too if you watch the games. The games are not very good most of the time. I'd say 90% of the time.
So sloppy.
Yeah.
Because who can go out there without a full week? We all realize that that's why the games were put on Sunday, because it takes, a full week of preparation to get it done. So it's like, yeah, we're just going to take 2 days away from you. It's like, sometimes you're just nailing things down that Saturday night.
Right.
You're like, okay, got it, right? Like sometimes you're just nailing it. That last Saturday meeting, you're like, we got it. All right. Let's go.
That begs a question for me. How much, you hear Coach Tomlin talk the standard is the standard, right? So, and I think a lot of people often misinterpret that maybe as sort of we do what we do. How much creativity goes into the defense, the offensive game plans? Is it more we do what we do and we're just like you said earlier, we're going to fine tune that? Or how do you think the Steelers rate on that sort of imaginative creativity approach to scheming versus other teams?
I mean, it's a pretty good balance. It just depends on your personality of your coach. My interpretation of the standard is that we genuinely believe that every single Pittsburgh Steeler is good at football. And we're going to hold you to the standard of being good at football. And we expect you to be a butt kicker too. Like we expect you, just by you being in this building, you should be able to handle yourself and you should be a tough physical football player. Because that's what we're expecting. Like if we cut the film on from any dude that we put in the game and we see something other than that, everybody's going to have a sour taste in their mouth because the expectation of you to be in this building with us. Like, it's a bunch of linebackers that we can go get. But bringing you in is because we understood that you were going to play a certain type of way and a certain brand of football. That's what the standard is. The standard means to me. As far as game planning and things like that, I'm pretty sure everybody goes about it a different way. I'm not going to tell you guys how they go about doing it. Like you watch the game, you get a sense of what we're trying to do. But yeah, I mean, it's a thought out process. It takes tons and tons of hours and work to get it done. It's actually a lot harder than, now that I'm outside of football, I didn't appreciate how complicated the NFL game was. And then I'm trying to do other jobs and I'm working at other business ventures. And I'm like, man, football was a lot more complicated than this. Or it took just the same amount of time. Like it is $1 billion organization.
I don't think most jobs give you a 1,000-page playbook when you start.
So no. So it's the detail at which you have to do things, right? Yeah. Like on one play, you may have 7 adjustments to how you have to play this one play. Okay, 7 is like a lot. But in reality, probably like 5. You may have 5 different ways that you got to be able to do this one thing, and you have to figure it out really, really fast. So you have to already have anticipation of what you're about to see. And then on top of what you're about to see, you need to know how to react to what you're seeing and be able to communicate that. And then you got to have at least 4 to 5 guys in one area of the field all see exactly what you see at the same time, communicate it, and play it one of the varied ways that you can play it.
and like that.
It has to be.
Yeah, most of your career, you wore the green dot, right? You were making the calls for the Steelers. How difficult is that with everything you just described now, plus you're making the calls to all your teammates? How difficult is that?
You got to have somebody who wants to be the green dot. I think a lot of my intangibles went unseen. I think my teammates would speak volumes to it, but I wasn't a person. I was a thumper, but I was very cerebral. I'm a gamer. I still like games. I like card games. I play chess. I love video games. I think that football is just a game. And I think to have the green dot, you have to have a person who can understand what the coach is trying to get done and see the game from their perspective. Now, it's hard for a corner to do that because the majority of his game is in one-on-one matchups, right? Like, yeah, you can have a smart corner. Joe Hayden was extremely intelligent, but he was only being able to convey his intelligence from his perspective, right? Which is one-on-one matchups from one side of the field. So having a middle linebacker that thinks that way, it broadens the entire defense because he's in the middle of the field. He has to see everything. And since he's in the middle of the field, he can communicate everything. So having that guy is very important. I think those dudes have to be groomed, or you have to find a person who has already done it at the college level. And you just get them and they can just do it at the NFL level.
What helped you be so good in that department, Vince?
Coach Stoops made me do it. So I was the least athletic linebacker at Florida State that we brought in. So I couldn't play on the edges because I couldn't cover. I wasn't able to get into the hook curl areas of defenses, and I couldn't guard athletic number 2 apex offensive players. So I had to be in the middle. So I had to make myself useful. So just being my natural self, I just dug into the game of football. I dug into what my responsibility was. And then from understanding what my responsibility was, I started to think about the potential of what it could be and how much value in this specific area could I add to an entire defense if I just, stretched my capabilities. And that's when I just was like, oh man, if I know what I'm doing, I know what the offense is doing. I'm just going to tell everybody. I'm just going to tell everybody what they're doing. Like, and that's just what I got good at. I was like, oh, I know what they're doing. I'm just going to tell everybody what they're doing. Well, I know what they're trying to do to us. So I'm going to tell everybody what we got to do to stop that.
As long as it was loud, right? Tomlin likes loud people, right? He likes.
Well, yeah, you can't keep any secrets out there.
Yeah.
But that's what makes having a smart defense so effective, because if me and Joe, if I have to work with Joe Hayden, right, if our responsibilities happen to coincide and you have two smart people looking at the same thing, our anticipation is equal. So we're anticipating what was about to happen to us, and that lets us play super fast. And it takes less communication because he already understands what's going on. We just look at each other like, you see what I see? He's like, yes. And then we just go play football.
Listening to you say all that, do you think the Steelers will struggle a little bit with two brand new inside linebackers this season? I mean, it's got to be an adjustment period, right? Especially if you haven't played the defense before.
I think those guys are two green dots. So I think it'll be easier for them once they understand what we're trying to get done. I think once they get, and they're vets too. So they already been in systems. They've already played these coverages at an NFL level. I think once they explain their jobs, then they'll be good. I think for them, it's just going to be, can they actually do it? That's the benefit of going out and drafting a person, because you're really going to get that person that can do it at a high level. And then you can build them into the system that you want them to be able to do. I mean, a free agent is super plug and play. Now we just got to say, can you do that? Like, can you do it? There's really no time for development. We're going to know really fast if they can do it or not. For real. Like, we're going to know within 3 games, like, nah, that ain't it. Can't do it.
What do you think of Mark Robinson? Have you paid any attention to him? People have actually compared him to you a little bit.
I think Mark Robinson can be a very good football player. I think he's very new to the position. So I think being new to the position is hurting him. But if he has time, he needs to find physicality right now is his distinguishing trait. It's what's setting him apart. As a longtime thumper in today's NFL, it is not valued highly. So he's going to have to find another distinguishing trait besides physicality, because that's not what it used to be. So he needs to find something to hang his hat on that's going to allow him to develop in other parts of his game. And if he can find a way to do that and stick around, I think he can have a huge career with how athletic he is and how physical he is. I think those two together are great building blocks to have a pretty good NFL career.
We talked about this a little while ago, Vince, and you talked about how that thumper position is less yet more valuable now because it's less utilized by some teams, but when you find a guy, they're more valuable because not as many guys are trying to play and being put in that position. Do you still feel that way? Do you find that thumper position, that linebacker, to be growing again in value, or how do you see the value of that position in today's NFL?
I think it's just like the rest of the NFL, right? Like we gotta be plus. I tell the guys that I coach now, it's like, yes, you do something, but you got to be plus. Like running backs just can't be running backs anymore. That doesn't work, right? Now you have to be running back plus. Wide receivers can't even be wide receivers. You have to be wide receiver plus. Quarterbacks all have to have mobility. Safety's got to be able to be plus. So you can be a thumper. You just got to be a thumper plus something else. Like you got to be a thumper plus pass rush, a thumper plus long rangy athletic cover guy in space. Like you have to be a thumper, which is a person who brings a physical dominance to the game of football, an enforcer. But you have to be that and something else. Like the days of just being one thing on a football field, I mean, you just got to be a kicker now. That's really it. But everything else, you got to be
taking a kicking game away.
Yeah, pretty much, right? The fair catch stuff and everything. Yep. The Steelers have always been known as like a family-oriented organization. It's been even more so the last couple of years with drafting brothers and acquiring brothers like Herbigs and the Haywards, and now even Joey Porter Jr. People forget you played with your brother on the Steelers as well. What was that like? And
it was amazing, man. It was a blessing. Like, you play all the time in the backyard. You always talk about going to the NFL together. I mean, just getting to the NFL together is crazy. And then actually being in the same NFL locker room is just like, it's a real life dream come true. Like, he only played for a short time, but I have those memories for the rest of my life. We tell our kids about that type of stuff. Awesome. Like, it's magical.
That's awesome.
If you're a kid trying to get to the NFL today, what would you advise any young player trying to get in the NFL today? What's the biggest and most important thing to tell them?
First of all, just to understand that if they have the measurables, right? I think that football is an extremely dangerous game. And this is where a lot of times people will disagree with me. I think football is for a certain type of person. You know what I mean? I think certain people need football. And just because you enjoy the game of football, I don't think it's safe for you to go play. I think there's a risk to it, much like MMA. Like, as much as we want to talk about making football safer, at the end of the day, it's human beings running at full speed at each other. It's not a very safe way to do that. So as a kid, I would tell him to evaluate his actual talent level. You know what I mean? Let's be real with yourself. Let's look at your talent level. Let's see what you're good at. Will do those traits make you a good football player? Do you enjoy the physicality of the game? Because at any level, it's going to be physical because it's a physical game. I think from there, I think you take it serious. You take it just as serious as you take your academics. I probably became a professional football player, I would say, at the age of 16, where I was on a strict diet, a strict workout regimen. I had a personal trainer. I started showcasing. Showcasing is just attending camps. You grind. I had a grind season. I played 2 sports, but when I got to high school, I stopped playing baseball and I focused primarily on football. When I wasn't playing football, I was training for football, and I just made it a real priority at a very early age.
Vince, that last season, you came back, they cut you came back, you came to training camp for a little while, and then you decided to retire. What went into that? What happened there?
Oh man, I was just kind of done with football. I felt like I was starting to become less of a football player. It was really hurting too. Like, the injuries were stacking up. I took a huge pay cut. So I was like, man, I'm not really myself. I'm a shell of myself. And I felt like, I didn't want to be one of those veteran guys that are sticking around that would hinder the guys in front of me. Like, I think Devin Bush and Robert Spillane would have got less of me by me being there. Like, everybody was like, oh, you should have just been the veteran president, stuck around. I was like, no, I wasn't to that point yet. I still would have played. And it wasn't just, I felt like it wasn't beneficial for them to be in competition for me when I wasn't really feeling like myself either. Like, after that, and then we lost to the Browns. That sucks.
Oh, I was mad as hell. I was mad as hell when you retired.
Pouncey retired. It just didn't feel like the same team. I remember walking out there. Me and Cam Hayward were sitting there, and I remember I felt old. And I was like, man, I'm old. Like,
I'm a lot older than you, so that's painful for me to hear this.
Yeah, but as a football player, it's different. I still love football, but it was just like, man, I'm old.
Did you talk to Ike? I remember Ike, when I talked to him, told me a story about how, I'm trying to remember who it is he told on the sidelines in the middle of the game. He said, I'm done. And he knew it, like, in the middle of the game. He said, I'm done, and I know it. And he told one of the coaches then. Did you talk to Ike at all about how you were feeling about retirement?
I didn't talk to anybody. I just knew it, though, because everybody tells you that you're just going to know. But I knew if I talked to my teammates, they would talk me out of it. They would talk me back in. So I think Cam Hayward was a little mad at me because I didn't say anything. I didn't answer my phone for a couple of days. But I knew that if I picked up, they'd be like, no, you can't do it. You got to come back. You're leaving us. And they would talk me into coming back.
Nice to be wanted.
But I don't know. I think it was time. I think at the end of the day, I think every football player knows. They know. And as crazy as that is, because, people tell you that when you get into the NFL. Like, guys, it's going to happen shorter. It's going to be shorter than you think it's going to be. It's going to happen a lot faster than you think it's going to happen. And before you know it, you're going to be, a vet. And then before you know it, you're going to retire. Like it's going to pull up on you one day. And I think that was it for me.
You made the rounds on social media a little bit. Tyreek Hill had a TikTok, I guess, where he said he almost gave up on kick return and after you hit him one time. Do you remember that hit? And
oh yeah, I remember all of my bodies. I got them all on videotape. Yeah, it just goes back. But I think a lot of those stories are going to come out like that. I always prided myself on playing the game what football players and football fans would call the right way. And I think it's a bunch of people that feel like that Vince Williams was a dominant presence on the football field because that was the way that I wanted to leave the game. And I think through my approach, I was able to do that. So it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I tried to kill everybody I hit.
Do you like the way the game's changed now that, your style is seemingly fading out by, the NFL standards? Do you miss the way it was maybe when you first came into the league, and do you like the direction the NFL's going in now?
I want guys to still hit though. It's don't care as much. I think they toned it down too much. We need some more guys that don't care.
Right.
I knew I could get fined for things. I knew I was going to go in there and argue and I was going to have video evidence, but I wasn't going to not take a shot on a guy. I think that people undervalue the fact that football does hurt a little bit. You know what I mean? The reason we love those stoic quarterbacks was because they used to get hit and deliver pinpoint balls. That'll never happen again. They took that element out. You will never see a quarterback, maybe being tripped or getting hit, but man, I've seen some shots of Brett Favre and Ben, standing in the pocket. That takes guts for real. That takes something different. These guys are protected. That's why we're seeing all these pretty nice quarterbacks just stand in the pocket and rifle things off, because the threat of them actually getting hit like any other football player is completely taken away. So I want guys to still be aggressive, play the game aggressively. We don't have to be so passive, right? It's play the game aggressively outside of the trenches, because they still, the trenches, it still goes down there. That's still a grown man's game. But I want to see linebackers running around and blasting some of these little receivers. Do it in a legal way. Use your shoulder. The hit I hit with Tyreek Hill had no helmet in it at all. It was a shoulder tackle. Mm-hmm. So there's still ways to be physical. Physicalness still has a very, very important role in our game today. I just wish people took advantage of it.
Do you think it's being coached out as much as played out?
I think at the younger levels, it's definitely being coached out, right?
Yeah.
I think that the younger level guys, they don't know how to encourage aggression, right? I wouldn't speak to my kids going to school the same way I would talk to my football players. I talk to my football players like different 9, 10, 11-year-olds because they're playing a football game. I wouldn't have that same level of aggression talking to a kid that doesn't compete in a combat sport. It's just certain levels of ways I have to talk to these kids, but they signed up for football, and that's what football is. So I know as a coach, I have to be able to handle that. I think a lot of people looked at the hits that people were taking and the injuries of it, and they kind of wanted to take the aggression out of the game. But I don't think you have to take the aggression out. I think the way you go about changing the injury is you change the way you tackle. You change the language behind it. It's you don't tell them to hit them with their head. We're not telling you to not hit hard. We're just telling you, don't lead with your head. Don't duck your head, not with the crown of the head. Don't take cheap shots on guys. You know what I mean? Body tackles and shoulder tackling. But you can hit them as hard as you want to hit them. It's actually encouraged to hit them as hard as you can. That's just a real thing. That's what football is at the end of the day.
On a lighter note, I was prepping for this interview, and I saw your training camp appearance as Stone Cold Steve Austin. That was kind of a trend going on. Steelers were coming in. Who had the best training camp entrance during your time?
I had the best training camp entrance.
I would agree with you, by the way.
The best. Nobody ever thought of that.
Who was second best?
Yeah, who was second? That's a good question.
Oh, man. I like
Somebody
Debo
came
in the
tank,
fire
right?
truck. Debo in the fire truck was cool. I like that one too.
Wasn't it AB in the helicopter?
Wasn't Kiesel on the tractor?
Yeah,
that's right. That was a good one too.
Yeah, it was Kiesel. Yeah.
Was
it
it
a lot of fun?
Definite thing to try to one up each other? Was it just
No, it was just, guys being guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, training camp's so miserable, man. Like, and then you have to show up and really, really be prepared and ready to go. So it was interesting. Like, I just did it to have fun with it. I wanted to kind of be a little lighthearted. I was kind of known as a serious guy, so I like to go switch back and forth. I got to have some balance.
Is that one of the great things about playing with Mike Tomlin? Like, he'd let you be yourselves a little bit, but still be, a tough coach, kind of a combination players coach, tough coach.
I think it is the best thing about Mike Tomlin. I think it really is. I think it's what makes him the best. I remember when, they just take the ability for the Steelers to take a player, look at what he does well, and to use him in that capacity is second to none in the NFL. Like, they do it the best. Like, I was a guy that I didn't even do 7-on-7 at college. I had no pass experience reps because my coaches at Florida State was like, oh, Vince is a thumper. We'll just put him in he'll just be a thumper. Well, the Steelers drafted me and they were like, well, we know you can do this, but what else can you do? How do we help you develop in that way too? And then really kind of like specializing a role for me to succeed in that. I think they did the same thing with Mike Hilton. I think they did the same thing with Ryan Clark. Just kind of fixing the defense around these guys and asking them to do things that they can do extremely well and letting them have a great deal of success doing that. And I think it builds a tremendous amount of confidence in that player because you're not putting them in horrible positions. And then when you do have to put them in horrible positions, since you've limited his exposure to it so much, he actually feels that, he has a leg up because he doesn't have to do this a lot. I don't know. I think that helps everybody. I think it's one of the best things the Steelers do. I think it is the best thing they do.
Vince, we really appreciate you doing this and taking the time out to come on this podcast with us. Again, thanks a lot for doing this. We appreciate your time. We'd love to have you back on at some point again, maybe during the season or something. Again, thanks a lot for coming on the Steelers Sanctuary podcast, bud.
Hey, no problem, man. Hey, thank you for retweeting those guys that I sit out too, man. I try to get a lot of guys from this area, Western Pennsylvania. Try to get them noticed. I try to get them recruited. That's important to me right now, man. I want to send as many of these guys to college for football as I can. I want to get football back in Western PA. I want to get that fire back like it was in the 90s and stuff. I want it rolling again, man. Now that I'm a part of it, I'm just sold out to it. I love it. So thank you guys for retweeting that stuff for me.
Yeah, if there's any more, let us know.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, no problem.
All right, it's good.
All right, thanks. That was Vince
Right,
Williams on the Steelers Sanctuary podcast. Thanks.